rushed for political reasons, saying an outside firm is monitoring the Phase 3 clinical trials now underway, and the government won't know the outcome of those tests until they're completed. Joe Biden took reporters' questions Wednesday for the first time since accepting the Democrat presidential nomination and said he's headed to Kenosha, Wisconsin in a few hours.
There's been overwhelming requests that I do come because what we want to do is we got to heal. We got to put things together, bring people together.
Biden says he will meet with community and business leaders in Kenosha and the family of Jacob Blake, whose shooting by police touched off several nights of violent protests. There's been a fatal police shooting in Washington, D.C. Police Chief Peter Newsham says they had a tip about men with guns in southeast D.C. when officers stopped a car.
When they approached the vehicle, some of the folks in the vehicle fled on foot. One of the officers discharged his firearm. We have what we believe to be an adult male that was taken to a local hospital and pronounced dead.
The chief says a gun was recovered at the scene, but he wouldn't speculate on what prompted the police to fire. Angry demonstrators marched to a D.C. police station and then to the home of Mayor Muriel Bowser. They called him Tom Terrific. Baseball Hall of Fame pitcher Tom Seaver has died. His family says from dementia and the coronavirus. Tom Seaver was 75. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
President Trump has authorized a review of federal spending in several cities, including Portland, Seattle, and New York City.
President Trump has actively been trying to kill New York City ever since he's been elected. And it's a personal animus, as it normally is with the president. I think it's because he is from New York City, and New York City rejected him.
That's New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo. An administration memo says they will not allow federal tax dollars to fund cities that allow themselves to deteriorate into lawless zones. A San Francisco Bay Area police officer has been charged with voluntary manslaughter in the shooting death of a black man inside a Walmart store back in April. San Leandro police officer Jason Fletcher was answering a call about an alleged shoplifter at the store when he found Stephen Taylor holding a baseball bat. When he refused to drop it and shook off a blast from a taser, Officer Fletcher shot and killed Taylor. The district attorney says the officer's actions were not reasonable use of force. YouTube under fire for using too broad a brush to sweep away potential disinformation from its platform.
California social media attorney Ian Corzine argues in their quest to get rid of fake information, a lot of legitimate content is getting pulled too.
It could be bad content that you and I agree would not be appropriate to be put out into this world. It also pertains to legitimate debates that may be passionate, that may be aggressive, but are trying to get out truths that are out there that the American public, that the global public needs to have access to.
YouTube's removals of video has nearly doubled in recent months. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Strengthening into a Category 1 hurricane, Nana, now on a collision course with the Central American nation of Belize. Thousands of people stocking up on food, water, and construction materials in the hours before landfall. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Pick up dinner for you and the family at Chili's. We got you covered with a variety of delicious family platter options, like our fajita trio, Cajun chicken pasta, or our crispy chicken crispers. Or order off our new menu for you and a friend and indulge in our tasty burgers, tacos, and ribs. Get your Chili's favorites in a way that works for you. Call 648-7377 or WhatsApp 929-7376 for curbside pickup orders. Or get delivery with Good to Go. Chili's, you can still savor the moments at home.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not ever. As far as I'm concerned here on Tall Tales.
Ever, ever, ever.
Ever. I start the program every day with the Second Amendment as a reminder to all and sundry that this program is a constitutionally oriented call-in talk show where the United States Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, are a very important part of the discussion. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about politics, both local and national, and social trends in both places. So let me start out with what I refer to as Zemi Ikotni, which is a backwards play on words, meaning translating to Meet the Press, except ours is better than NBC's Meet the Press, first of all, because I'm the host, of course, and second, because I don't try to play any games that I'm neutral and fair and even-handed, etc. I'm not. I have my own biases, and I bring them to bear in the program every day. As I said, conservative, Republican, you won't find even a single symptom of TDS on this program, Trump derangement syndrome. So somebody is really, really eager to get on the air. The Jimmy line has been opened before I've even gotten into Jimmy Ikotni, but I hate to keep Jimmy waiting. So what can you tell me today, Jimmy?
No, I can't tell you anything. I just want to ask you something.
Fire away, Jimmy.
Okay, yeah, I've been living here in Guam. I want to get a firearm. I want to get a 12-gauge shotgun and a 22 rifle. Now, how do I do that?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to get a firearms ID. And in order to do that, of course, everything is triple harder than it is in normal times because of
I didn't say that.
because of the so-called Wuhan virus. But when the police department is open, you go to Records and ID in the ITC building and pony up, I think it's $10. They'll take your picture and give you a real nice ID card. And when you have that ID card, then you can own a firearm. Then you find a firearms dealer, purchase the firearm, and within 24 hours, take it to the armory of the police. I don't even know where that is right now, because you have to.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Could I?
I'm not finished with my explanation yet, Jimmy. So you take that firearm to the armory of the police department and register it. Then you can carry that firearm openly. But make sure you got that firearms ID in your pocket when you do it.
You sure about that?
I'm sure. Why?
I don't want no pistol. I just want a 22 and a 12 gauge.
Well, whatever turns you on, Jimmy. But you can't. You're probably not going to carry that 12 gauge concealed anyhow, right?
No.
I didn't think so.
Well, you know, some people may. Anyway, we won't talk about that. But I'm not going to carry a concealed 12 gauge or a concealed 22 rifle.
Yeah, I didn't think you wanted to do that.
But I just
now concealed, Jimmy. Concealed also means keeping it in your car under certain circumstances. Yeah.
Is that legal in Guam?
Well, if it's in your car, there are some special rules that apply. So just to have it under the, in the back seat, I don't know. It's something you'd have to study up on. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I call you. But still, so I go see if I want to get a gun, I got to go to GCIC. And then Tammany.
You go to GCIC, Police Department, Records and ID, and get yourself a firearms ID. Then you go to a gun dealer, buy your gun, and take the gun to the armory of the police department, which I'm not sure where it is right now, and register the firearm. Then you're all set.
No, the first thing I want to do is comply with GovGuam's. So which form do I have to fill out? Where do I get that form?
You get that form at Records and ID, Jimmy.
GCIC?
GCIC.
So I go in there and ask them for the form, fill out the form, pay them a bunch of money. Then I get a firearms ID.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Then I get a firearms ID. Then they take my picture.
Jimmy, Jimmy, this has been a lot of fun, but we've been through this 3 times now. With your leave, I'd like to go back to Zemi Ikotny, if it's okay.
I'm sorry to bother you.
Okay.
Please forgive me.
All right, Jimmy.
Mea culpa.
Okay, Jimmy. Go and sin no more. Thank you for calling. Okay, Zemi Ikotny, we start out with the daily news. And as usual, the U.S., instead of a real editorial, it's USA Today editorial board. And as is their usual custom, they exhibit TDS themselves, Trump Derangement Syndrome. And the title of this one is Trump Stokes Unrest. Biden condemns selectively. The nation's summer of unrest has devolved in several cities to radical elements facing off in the streets, seemingly poised for combat. I wonder where the writer of this editorial has been. You see where he's coming in the first sentence here. Has devolved the nation, let's see, radical elements facing off in the streets. There's only one radical element in the streets. There are not radical elements. There's one radical element. It's called Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And then seemingly poised for combat. The combat's been going on in Portland for over 2 months. Blame shifting over this tense situation is rampant. But the majority of Americans have an uncluttered answer. Violence in all forms is simply wrong, even when it's condoned by mayors of Democrat cities. Where's my horn there, Jose? That goes for excessive police force used disproportionately against blacks, burning and looting by demonstrators, protesting racial injustice. Boy, you got to wonder what planet these USA Today editorial writers are living on. And armed counter demonstrations by right-wing elements. Armed counter demonstrations. One 17-year-old kid, right, who belongs to the Boy Scouts. That's armed counter demonstrations.
Yeah, that's a little stretch out.
But that calculus, plenty of accountable people are behaving irresponsibly. They are, and they're all on the left. Some of them are dressed all in black and wear masks. They call themselves Antifa. Others are using the BLM logo as their cover for looting and arson. And then a lot of them are municipal officials, mayors, who say, well, if they want to take over a part of Seattle, it's okay. Maybe it'll be a summer of love. District attorneys like the guy Schmidt in Multnomah County who says, I'm not going to prosecute these people just for resisting arrest and other kinds of misconduct like that. And another district attorney who says we don't prosecute for theft until we decide whether or not the person really needed it. Yeah, by that calculus, plenty of accountable people are behaving irresponsibly, and they're all of the same ilk. And stroking turmoil, if President Donald Trump honestly sought law and order in the streets, he could save lives by urging his followers to stay away from Black Lives Matter demonstrations in cities such as Portland and Kenosha.
I'm confused.
Yeah, really. If they must have a comedy writer writing up this stuff. Instead, Trump does the opposite, applauding as great patriots a caravan of disciples who ventured into Portland this past weekend. One motorcade through Portland, flying American flags.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Just one.
Burning nothing, looting nothing, etc. One of them, Aaron Danielson, a supporter of a self-described conservative Christian group, well, that's as bad as it gets, called Patriot Prayer, was shot dead Saturday night during protests. Well, it's his fault. If he gets in the way of firing rifles, what does he expect? Beep, beep. Monday, the president defended 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse as acting in self-defense when he traveled from his home in Illinois with a rifle. He didn't have a rifle with him. And allegedly gunned down protesters in Kenosha last week. Rittenhouse was arrested and charged with murder. Now, Rittenhouse's lawyers and people who actually saw what went down said Rittenhouse was defending himself. And I suppose you could condemn Rittenhouse for not staying out of the way of the looters and rioters. Because as the story unfolds, Rittenhouse works in Kenosha. He was called by a friend who was afraid his store was going to be vandalized after 3 stores had been burned the night before. Gave Rittenhouse a rifle. Rittenhouse stood out in front of the store because the riots were going on, and without going into all the details, was chased by the rioters and had to fire his assault rifle. And of course, this makes it 15 times worse. It was an AR-15, right?
I read an AR-15 like rifle.
Yeah, that's really bad stuff. I mean, if
AR should sue that company. This is our design.
Really? Yeah, so, I mean, you can't talk about self-defense or anything like that. It's kind of like Dr. Akimoto and Jana Manglotnia. You cannot criticize these people. Mm-mm. Trump, who visited Kenosha on Tuesday, has embraced a dangerous political strategy. seeking to energize his base and scare urban voters by exploiting urban unrest. Wow. Yeah, he conflates peaceful protesters. Yeah, are there any? You know, the newspaper, the mainstream media, have an autocorrect in their word processor. So if they ever type the word demonstration, the words mostly mostly peaceful are added in without anybody having to hit a key.
There's a great screenshot. This is not a meme or somebody created. It's a great screenshot of buildings on fire, big, huge inferno from CNN. It says, mostly peaceful protests.
Yeah, that's a CNN report. A mostly peaceful protest, and there's a raging fire going behind it. He conflates peaceful protesters with a much smaller number who commit acts of violence, all but encouraging far-right right groups to confront them, which hasn't happened. It has not happened.
Quite the opposite.
President Joe Biden, the Democrat Party's nominee for president, did the right thing in his remarks on Monday. Biden told a nationwide news conference that so long as the rioters stay out of his basement, it's okay. Let's see, what did it really say here? President Joe Biden, the Democrat Party's nominee for the president, did the right thing in remarks Monday when he called out rioting, looting, and setting fires as lawlessness, plain and simple, and those who do it should be prosecuted. Biden also singled out right-wing militia as contributors to the violence. What has anybody said about right-wing militias? It's just a non-issue.
It's almost non-existent.
Really? In fact, I kind of wonder why. But avoided any reference to left-wing actors who can be equally fierce. So Biden did the right thing here.
I want to call him a new name.
Yeah.
Poxitani Joe.
Yeah, he comes out of his hole on February 2nd. See if the sun is shining, right? Puxatawny Joe. Biden also singled out right-wing militia contributors to violence, but avoided any reference to right-wing actors who can be equally fierce. Boy, that's really a good call, Joe. Publicly posted videos show the suspected gunman who killed Danielson in Portland standing with Black Lives Matter supporters before firing shots into Danielson's chest. Hours after Biden's remarks Monday, a man under investigation by police for that killing was identified as Michael Forrest Rainwell, a self-styled anti-fascist.
Not to be confused with Antifa.
Of course not. Totally different. Failing to stop the unrest, Trump has repeatedly attacked Democrat mayors of cities where protesters have turned violent as being incapable of effective leadership, while seemingly oblivious to the fact that nationwide protests marred by occasional violence have occurred under his watch as president. Yeah, this doesn't happen very often. But there's truth to the fact that Democrat mayors in Portland and Kenosha and governors in their respective states haven't acted quickly enough or employed enough manpower to safeguard lives, business, and property. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers called out additional guard troops 3 days, they don't say 3 days, after the shootings in Kenosha. And Oregon Governor Kate Brown sent more state police to assist Portland law enforcement the day after Danielson was killed. The interesting thing about state police in Oregon was they said they're not going to go. because the Multnomah County District Attorney publicly said, I'm not going to prosecute these bad guys. And, well, let's go on here. One of the lessons from the clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 was that separating far-right and far-left elements is a key law enforcement tool to prevent confrontation. They're inventing something that's not there. There isn't any far-right to separate.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's all left. It's the left against the police. And the mayors of these silly mayors of these cities have done their best to separate the police from the rioters by not backing them up. Quicker action in both recent cases might have helped authorities prevent deadly skirmishing. Again.
You don't say.
Yeah. Finger pointing is a facet of every election cycle. But this level of election season violence hasn't occurred since the street clashes of 1968. Now, in 1968, who were the rioters and what were they rioting about?
I wasn't even born then, Bob.
Well, I remember it very clearly. What they were rioting about was the Democrat National Convention in Chicago.
Oh, I did hear about that one.
Yeah. And the reason that they were rioting because they didn't think Hubert Humphrey was radical enough to be the Democrat nominee. So they tore Chicago apart.
I smell a repeat.
Yeah. And once again, you know, both sides were guilty. You know, there weren't any the conservatives, of course, were all backing Nixon, and they said, if that's what the Democrats want to do, fine, let them do it. Okay, this level of election season violence hasn't occurred since the street clashes of 1968. That makes it even more incumbent on leaders to act unselfishly and in a way that places a premium on lives rather than political point scoring. This is the dumbest editorial I think that I've read since I've been doing Tall Tales, and I've read some pretty dumb ones.
Where's that publication from?
This is the Guam Daily News. As usual, running boilerplate from USA Today editorial board.
They're zooming it in.
Yeah, so that kind of tells you something about USA Today as far as trustworthiness is concerned. Okay, I've still got to get to the post here, but I got a couple of callers. I've got Jimmy back for Jimmy Redux and another Joe. So I'm going to take another Joe right after this break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, you know, getting back to that editorial, I got this. Somebody told me that the guy who wrote the editorial had a headache, Jose. Yeah, so in order to deal with his headache, he finally wound up going to see a proctologist. Okay, so let's see what another Joe can tell me, and then I'll be back to Jimmy. who's going for his second ride on the Ferris wheel. Hello, Another Joe.
Yeah, Bob, I guess everyone's conveniently forgetting about the L.A. riots of was it 93, 92, 93?
Oh, yeah. That was a pretty good one, too, yeah.
So...
Can't we all just get along?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? But I'm trying to think here. Initially, I was calling about the Political Action Committee.
Uh-huh.
But then you started talking about all this other interesting stuff, and
that's always the case with Tall Tales. It happens all the time. People say, I was going to call about this thing, but then there were so many other things you were talking about on Tall Tales that I just wanted to sit there and listen. But it's okay that you called, Another Joe.
Thank you so much, Bob. Very educational show. I guess I'll go ahead and ask a question about. So, in regards to the Political Action Committee, do you agree with all the 5 points, or are there something you're not so certain about? I'll look at it real quick here. I got it on paper. In particular, what about the rolling back of the taxes? Are you?
Well, you know what, Another Joe. I'm not finished with Demi Ekotny yet. I haven't dealt with the Post yet. But I can tell you.
I apologize. Okay, I'll wait and hear about that.
I can tell you this, Another Joe. I'm going to give you a preview of the card, and let's see. I have an item on the card. What's it called here? Hang on just a second here. Oh, yeah. It's called The Women's Chamber versus Lou.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah.
Good one.
So I'm going to get to it, Another Joe.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because at some point the government must be funded to some extent, and this is one of the ways that the government will be funded, I think. So, is it going to be enough if they reduce those taxes, or are they going to be able to find funding sources from, let's say, the federal government or some other source?
Well, I know where the government could get $58 million in the snap of a finger, right, Another Joe?
Don't give out the EIT. Was it what's the acronym?
EITC cashback. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about that. So, and it never fails. I get some sort of a stage fright. It's so inspiring, yet at the same time intimidating. I guess it must be your height there, Uncle Bob. Right through the radio waves. You're kind of over. Was it your presence is overshadowing?
Oh, what little me?
all 6'8" of you. But anyway, what was it that you're right before I called? You were talking about the blaming President Trump while at the same time ignoring that these states have Democrat leaders, elected officials. And it reminded me of the Hurricane Katrina, where Bush was somehow very bad for just flying over Louisiana and not landing when Louisiana was mostly flooded. I'm trying to think, where would they have been able to safely land Air Force One and keep President George W. Bush safe in a what do you call a natural disaster area after Hurricane Katrina? And for that matter, how many of the Democrat leaders got in trouble for having not upgraded the infrastructure for how many decades? The levees You know, the all those safeguards in place from because New Orleans and much of Louisiana is lower than sea level.
So, another Joe, when you come right down to it, as far as Trump is concerned, we're back to that game called pin the tail on the donkey. You put on a blindfold and you take the tail with the pin sticking out of the end of the tail, and you wander around and you stick it in everything you see, hoping that you're going to hit Trump. So it wouldn't matter what he did or what he didn't do; they'd criticize him. I would think if I lived in Kenosha, and I grew up very close to Kenosha, I would be very happy to see the President of the United States come to Kenosha, come to my hometown, and tell me that he's going to help us rebuild the damage that these hoodlums create, these Democrat hoodlums created in my hometown. But, of course, I could never work for the USA Today editorial board, right, another Joe?
Hey. Okay, Bob, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. I'll just keep listening.
Good talking to you, another Joe. Jimmy, you're back on the Ferris wheel. Hello, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Maybe you could make a series of Biden quotes. And my first Biden quote is said, even poor people are just as smart as white people.
Yep.
Yeah, poor people are just as smart as white people. That's from Biden.
Uh-huh.
He was hoist with his own petard.
Yep.
Anyway, I promised to be brief, and I will.
Okay, Jimmy. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for calling. That's our Jimmy. Twice on the Ferris wheel at the very beginning of the show here. Now, perhaps I could finish up Jimmy Ikotny. So here we are. This is the Post. Fueling fear in this pandemic is not right. Sounds like a continuation of what the Daily News said, only the Post doesn't blame it on Donald Trump. If there's anything that should be cause for alarm in the $950 million budget that the legislature approved on Monday night, other than the alarming lack of the realization that nearly one-third of the island's economic engine has stopped making money, it's the drastic cut to the budget for public schools. Rather than making meaningful cuts to non-essential public services to save public classrooms from taking a major budget blow, GDUE took a dramatic cut in spending, the spending legislation that awaits the governor's action. This will be the third day of a 10-day deadline for the governor to sign the bill into law or issue a line-by-line rejection of portions of the budget plan. Rejection or reduction. The governor can veto any appropriation, or she can reduce any appropriation in the budget bill. The Department of Education asked for $365 million. DOE does normally get close to what it asked for, but to get a budget of $207 million is so far from what the public schools need to function. If anything, the cuts affecting public schools should be the cause of a major drumbeating in the administration's public campaign to question some of the budget details. Instead, we get the administration's outcry on Wednesday via the first installment of its Budget Basics press release. The administration's Budget Basics release on Wednesday afternoon states, the budget as passed guts public health operations appropriations by more than $3.7 million when compared to the agency's request. The governor's office states adding harm of that action, including the crippling reduction to the lead agency fighting the Wuhan virus pandemic and deploying our social safety net. It could result in the forced Are you ready for this, Jose? The forced furlough. The forced furlough of some experienced, locally funded public health personnel at the height of a pandemic. If you're gonna have a furlough, why not furlough Jane Flores? You know, we can get along without her going out and searching for an abortionist or leading the charge against Dr. Vince Akimoto.
She has letters to write, Bob.
That's true. Yeah, we can't short the bois. The BWA, right?
The Bwahaha.
Yeah. It could result in the forced furlough of some experienced, locally funded public health personnel at the height of a pandemic. And here's what the Post says about that. It's a nonsensical claim. A $3.7 million cut to public health's budget really will not harm public health's frontline workers and mission. Even casual observers of GovGuam spending know that federal funds are being provided to the government of Guam in the hundreds of millions of dollars for this pandemic, including a funding mechanism to tap into federal funds to compensate healthcare workers if their job is related to the fight against Wuhan virus. And social welfare programs that are being administered by public health are funded primarily by the federal government, including more than $100 million a year for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. Even the governor herself has proclaimed that GovGuam is awash in federal funds during this pandemic, and she doesn't expect that funding flow to change to a trickle anytime soon. Another claim that used public health as a budget defense argument was the proposal to reduce GovGuam spending on personnel by eliminating the budget for deputy director positions in GovGuam. You know, you all remember that scenario at the beginning of the Leon Guerrero administration. The 34th Guam legislature took deputy directors out of the budget. The ink was hardly dry on Lou's certificate on the oath, on the signature on the oath, and she started to fill those positions. A little later, the Attorney General said that such a provision was inorganic, but Lou started even before that. And she filled those deputy director positions. And the best example of what we're talking about here is Michelle Paris. During the shutdown, during the first shutdown, the first POS, you'll remember the entire government was shut down, except for frontline workers who were supposed to get paid double. And Lou brought Michelle Paris on board at GetDissid, the Department of, Department of Individuals, I can't remember what it means. It deals with disabled folks with developmental disabilities. Brought Michelle Paris on board as a deputy director, a teacher who apparently had no background in that area at all. And she was brought on board, the papers were cut, processed, etc., so she could stay home and draw a check. She couldn't even go to work. So, Lou, as far as talking about deputy directors, Governor, you have no credibility whatsoever in defending deputy directors. In her little set-to with Jim Moylan, she advanced some of the larger agencies as the reason that a deputy director was necessary. But Jim came back with a whole lot of smaller agencies, you know, that obviously could get along fine without deputy directors. But the editorial says, another claim that used public health as a budget defense argument was the proposal to reduce GovGuam spending on personnel by eliminating the budget for deputy director positions in GovGuam. The governor emphasized the need for public health deputy directors, especially during this pandemic, to continue to exist. While public health deputy directors' jobs are considered a necessity at this time, there are many other deputy director positions that could be eliminated without causing a ripple effect on key public services. It's not right to use public health to justify the lack of a reality-based GovGuam budget process. That strategy fuels fear in a community that is already on edge with the pandemic. The bond creditors who hold billion-dollar GovGuam debts might be nervous, too, that no meaningful budget cuts are being planned for more financial rainy days ahead. GovGuam debts are tied to tourism tax and retail tax collections are particularly a launch point for concern if investors are watching, and you can bet they're watching. Guam might not be in the same boat as Puerto Rico now, but Puerto Rico offers lessons for any territorial government that fails to step on the brakes when financial train wreck might be approaching. Good points. Let me see who R. James wants to chime in on the budget process. Good afternoon, R. James.
How's it going, Bob? You mentioned something a second ago. You mentioned a term that I think is very relevant and becoming more and more so at this time. You said the word oath. Well, not just financially and fiducially, but in all other aspects. Almost every elected and even appointed official, from the dog catcher all the way to the president of our United States, when they accepted the office that they hold, and the oath varies a little bit from position to position and state to state, but they all took an oath to uphold the laws, the Constitution, the rights of the United States and the people of, more known as we the people, and to be fiducially responsible and to protect everyone in the United States or in their state or in their city, their county, their municipality, their village, whatever. These people are accepting the office to protect and to take care of and to be the leaders and the smart people, and they are immediately turning around and destroying everything that our country is supposed to stand for, from the judicial questions such as we have here with GovGuam and our current governor, all the way on up to states where the city and the city council, the mayor, is telling the police that they can't stop the rioters, the looters, the protesters, that they have to stand by and just watch them do it. Okay, they're supposed to be protecting everyone, including the protesters. They're supposed to protect the protesters even from themselves.
If there are any protesters, James.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But in the case of the problem that we've got here in GovGuam, and we've had it before and we'll have it again, it's an ongoing and a systemic political problem, is that they take the oath of the office and then they come in and then they just immediately throw all of the things that they agreed to do and uphold in their oath, and they throw them out the window, and they start giving contracts and they start hiring people and they start creating positions, but they're not doing it with their personal checkbook. They're doing it with we the people's checkbook. And that makes them fiducially and responsibly derelict in their official duty. We just need to start throwing these bouncing these bums out on the street and let them walk around and try to find a job with everybody locked down.
Yeah, well,
they're derelict in their official duty, and they have violated their oath. They should be removed.
Here, R. James. Right on point. I got to take a break here, James, but you made a lot of sense.
Have a good one, Bob.
Thanks for calling.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 8 more minutes till that big halftime show that you've all been looking forward to. I've probably got one more call on the line before that, but I'm going to just chat a little bit about the budget process. There are a couple of things that I want to explain about the budget process. First of all, we start out with the revenue projection. And the revenue projection is presented as something that is scientifically arrived at. You know, when the governor presents her revenue projection, when the legislature presents his, you know, you have this mental image of people sitting behind keyboards and doing some high-powered calculations, and that they can calculate this stuff right down to the penny. But when you come right down to it, the major tool used in forecasting the revenue projection is something referred to as Kentucky windage. If you've ever shot a rifle, you know what Kentucky windage is.
Oh, I thought you were still talking about proctologists.
We'll leave that one behind for now, Jose. Yeah. So you come up with this revenue estimate, and then the budget then purports to indicate how that revenue will be spent. Now, if the revenue estimate is not high enough to cover all of the expenditures that the budgeteers want to put in the budget, the simple solution is, well, let's just increase the projected revenue, and that happens. But that just leads to greater problems down the road, because if the revenue projection is unrealistic, it's too high, then when we get into the year, portions of the funding set out in the budget are just not going to be filled. The Bureau of Budget and Management, the gnomes of the Bureau of Budget and Management Research will say there is a budget for that expense, but our cash flow will not allow us to fund that particular appropriation. And it happens all the time, usually to the Department of Education and the university. So there's this kind of pretend game that goes on with the revenue projection. If you want to get a lot of applause at the end of the budgetary process, what you do is you first of all figure out how much everybody wants, and then make your revenue projection coordinated with that, so there's enough money in the revenue projection to cover all the expenditures. But of course, that's nonsense, because you're just kicking the can down the road, so to speak. Here's something else to remember about the budgetary process. The governor can reduce appropriations to 0, or she can veto an appropriation. The legislature this time around gave the governor a 15% transfer authority. So what she can do is she can take her blue pencil and she can go through that budget and she can reduce appropriations to zero, leaving just that much more to transfer. And then after she signs the budget, she can start moving money around. The legislature perhaps abrogates some of its responsibility when it provides that transfer authority to the governor, because the governor really determines what's appropriated and what's not. Here's an interesting footnote on the budgetary process. If the legislature doesn't pass a budget by the 30th of September, this year's budget is reappropriated for next year by operation of law. It just becomes the law. So we're never in that situation like the national government where we don't have a budget to operate on. The whole undertaking is one that is characterized as horse trading. And there is a way to avoid the horse trading, and that's this way. Let's say that we decide that the Department of Education, Guam Memorial, and Public Health and Social Services are our top priority. What we do is we appropriate the money for the Department of Education, pass the bill, send it to the governor. And we do the same thing for the hospital and for public health and for education. And we provide enough money to do those jobs correctly. And when we're finished with that, we leave a pot of money behind and say, the governor, you can have the money that's left, and you decide which one of your agencies gets how much money. And pursuant to Chapter 1A of Title V, the governor has great ability to move people and departments and agencies around to make that all work. But if you don't appropriate the money for what you claim is a priority, what happens is you do the whole budget at one time. And Senator Smucker-Huckowitz stands up and says, I can't vote for this budget. You didn't give the Department of Education enough money. I want to increase the Department of Education appropriation by $5 million. You hardly get the word dollars out of your mouth, and a half dozen senators are hollering at you, where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut? So what you're doing then is you're putting the least important, least critical agency, am I thinking of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, on the same plane as a critical agency like the Department of Education. Because you can't add to one without taking from the other. And, just like Joe San Augustine said, we're not going to have to lay anybody off. So, not taking money away from an agency, that's really important. Giving enough money to the critical agencies to function correctly, well, that's something else. Okay, I've got Senator Moylan on the line, and Senator Jim Moylan, I'll get to you right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
DC on Edge. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. After Washington police shot and killed a young black man Wednesday afternoon. Angry residents gathered outside a Southeast D.C. police station. Washington's Police Chief Peter Newsham says officers were acting on a tip.
They were following up on information that they had relative to some subjects who had guns in a vehicle in this area.
As police approached, some of the car's occupants fled on foot. In a statement, D.C. police say one of them, an 18-year-old, pointed a gun at them. Police fired, killing the man. At the protests, a woman claiming to be the dead man's aunt disputing the police account.
Shooting an 18-year-old in the back, and the bullet came through the heart. So today I am here to let them see Black lives really matter.
Demonstrators also converged on the home of Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Joe Biden is going to Kenosha, Wisconsin today, he says, to talk about healing after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Biden telling reporters Wednesday he and the police support police reform.
All the police I've dealt with my whole life, and I've been dealing with, I've gotten overwhelming support from law enforcement through my whole career. They're the ones that want to get rid of the bad cops even more than anybody else does.
Biden taking reporters' questions yesterday for the first time since accepting the Democrat presidential nomination. The Congressional Budget Office projecting the federal deficit is about to hit a record $3.3 trillion because of spending to fight the coronavirus and to inoculate the economy against its effects. But it was a robust day on Wall Street, the Dow closing above 29,000 and new highs for NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Asian markets closing Thursday higher in Japan, lower in China and Hong Kong. Dow futures are down slightly. Hurricane Nana has made landfall within the last hour along the coast of Belize as a Category 1 hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Over worries about the coronavirus, many school teachers are opting to stay away from the classroom.
Many states are seeing teachers take leaves of absence or opt to retire. New York State alone has seen a 20% jump in retirements this summer compared to last year. Pinellas County in Florida has seen an 11% increase. While one New Jersey town was forced to go all remote after 250 teachers requested a leave of absence. Several school districts across the country have seen similar trends. The American Federation of Teachers, the country's second largest teachers union, believes the shortages will grow. Schools are also bracing for a shortfall of substitute teachers when staff calls out. One town in New Jersey specifically advertising for locals to apply, leading to questions about the quality of their kids' educators.
Fox's Christina Partsenevelis, voter fraud charges filed against several people in North Carolina.
Federal prosecutors say each of the 19 people charged were not U.S. citizens and voted in the federal election 4 years ago. One of the defendants also voted in the 2018 midterms. Names and nationalities of those accused were not revealed in a press release. Some of the defendants were also accused of making false statements about the crime. Non-citizens caught casting a ballot face a year in prison, a possible fine up to $100,000, or both. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel claims that Alexei Navalny, the critic of Russian leader Vladimir Putin, who's being treated in her country, was poisoned with a nerve agent in an attempt to murder him. Moscow denies any involvement, and the Russian Foreign Ministry says Germany's claim is not backed by any evidence. Preparing for talks with the Taliban, the Afghan government announcing it's moving 7 prisoners to Qatar, soon to be released at the Taliban's insistence. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
They're back,
Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. Conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Hoffaday, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Okay, all you tailgaters out there in the international radio listening audience, I hope you appreciated that big halftime show that we have every day at 1700. I had Jim Moylan on the line just before the break. I suspect he's back. So with no further ado, good afternoon, Senator Moylan.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. And yes, I appreciate the fantastic halftime show. Thank you for that. And I was able to listen to your comments regarding the budget bill, and you're absolutely right. It's a good point you brought up about the 15% the transfer authority that the governor has over the entire budget, and she has every right to utilize that. And this budget, which was passed by her Democrat senators, a majority of them, I voted no. But that budget and their 15% transfer authority, they actually wanted 30% of transfer authority, and I introduced an amendment to cancel that because I just thought that's just way too high. It's unheard of, and it's actually ridiculous. Unfortunately, I think we had 8 votes, 8, which we had enough to override that or to pass that amendment. So I'm glad of that. But this is the budget that the Democrat majority, I call some of my fellow senators, I would say, give them the title of rubber stampers, that moved this budget bill forward. And now the governor is saying that it's wrong, and she's coming out with all these different points of view. And some of them, of course, were echoed during our process when we were reviewing the budget for those 2.5 weeks, which, by the way, her cabinet that she mentioned so highly of, and I'm sure they're hard workers, but they refused to participate after it was determined that the majority of us were not going to give the increase to the total general fund revenues. They wanted an additional $7 million, and I thought that was irresponsible as well.
In other words, you wouldn't go along with their revenue projection.
No, that's correct.
Yeah, so you were using calculators and they were using Kentucky windage, right?
Right. Yeah, just 3 degrees to the left or to the right. Yeah, correct. Yeah, maybe they can get a patch one day, but it's not going to work with our budget bill. And I proposed other cuts as well, and that's one thing I didn't see my colleagues wanting to do. Such things in the budget bill included the Pacific Islands Development Bank, PIDC, and that's $1 million coming out of the general fund that the governor may or may not do. It's up to her, but because it's in there, she has the authority to do that. And during that discussion, when I proposed the amendment to eliminate that, it probably does great things in the outer islands and
Jim,
the economy, but it won't.
If I could jump in here, it does nothing at all. It's
okay.
It makes the tummies of those who vote for it nice and warm. Oh, we're helping out our Micronesian brothers and solidarity with our brothers and sisters, and it does no good at all. It came up in the 28th, and we didn't do it. We didn't appropriate any money for it at all. And I don't think we did in the 27th either.
Well, and that likewise we did not, but it gives her the authority to utilize whatever money she wants to from wherever she wants to take it to enforce it, to put it into place. And it should not be, just like what you mentioned on the 28th. So that failed, so that's still in there. And of course, you mentioned the deputy directors and all these things I've been trying to do since the first budget I got participated in too, removing the deputy director positions. And back then, last year's budget, there was less deputy directors than there are today in non-essential positions during this pandemic. And that would have saved $1.5 million at my calculations previously. And of course, you made the argument, and the news stories were out there as well. But do something, and I don't see any of the rubber stampers were trying to reduce budget. Instead, they were, a lot of them were trying really hard for their committees to find money and to look at any excess from last year all the way back to FY19. I believe they were trying to find money, and any excess to include for the FY20 budget. That's any excess that's dedicated to these agencies, and that's what they were doing instead of trying to, which that's good, but no one was trying to reduce the expenses. Deputy directors, PIC Development Bank, and also the executive security. The governor talks about we're taking away from the education, public health, and safety. Well, the governor can have her security, but it should come under the executive branch's budget. Right now, it looked like it's going to be close to $1 million they'll spend on executive security, and previous administrations did that plus more. But I'm not taking away the authority to have executive security. I just think it should come out of the budget of the executive office, and when it comes out of your own purse, you're more likely to be watch your expenses.
I'm gonna jump in here again, Jim.
Sure.
I don't see the necessity of this executive security. First of all, police officers are not trained to be they're not trained to be security. They're trained to be police officers. And we all know that the major function of the executive security is to be chauffeurs. So you could hire a chauffeur for a whole lot less than you could hire a police officer. Police officers can arrest criminals, chauffeurs can't. So the whole thing to me is a boondoggle. And I want to add something else in here too. I'm impressed by the good faith with which senators approach their budgetary duty. I was so happy to see Senator Shelton introduce an amendment or a provision in the budget law that would transfer $500,000 from the revolving recycling fund to, what's the name of that agency? A3 at the university?
G3.
J3, yeah.
G as in golf.
And when I found out what J3 does with that $500,000, I was really happy because they have conferences and meetings. So Senator Shelton really got my attention on that forward-looking piece of legislation. And I just think it's so unfair the way people are criticizing her from taking money from the recycling fund and giving it to an agency that her brother's in charge of. That's just so unfair, Jim.
Definitely. And I just paid $36 on my registration for my vehicle to go to the recycling fund. Basically, I thought that should not happen. That was raiding the people's money into the recycling fund. The G3 will not be picking up abandoned vehicles on the side of the road. It would not be picking up the white goods on the side of the road. Everything that the mayors want this recycling fund money to be used for, that's not the purpose of the G3.
But they're going to have meetings and conferences. Isn't that just as good?
That's true as well, and that was unfortunately the majority wanted to keep that and didn't even think it should be called a raid on the recycling fund. But they're stealing the taxpayers' money for what it was exactly meant for. So and now the governor is coming back to saying this budget, which they put together, her Democrats put together, is not any good when she does have the transfer authority, which they should, but take action that way. But it's dragging on, and we're losing time. If you feel it's not good, then in your powers as governor, veto it, and then let this legislature get back to work instead of playing these little games and doing these. I think she's trying to get headlines.
One more, Jim, pardon me again, but I had one more thing to say on Shelton to Shelton, that famous double play combination, Shelton to Shelton. And some people said, isn't that nepotism where a senator is raiding a fund, a salutary fund, just to fund her brother's agency? And my response is, nepotism's okay so long as you keep it in the family.
But I'm pumped on that. Yeah, exactly. And it was asked in our meeting, or one of the senators had asked the author of the bill to recuse herself, and she said no, and she felt she had every right to vote and did not feel a conflict. But it was asked of her to recuse herself, and she declined.
Did she tell us how many brothers she had?
No, nor was that question asked.
Yeah, it could have been if you only got one brother, I guess you could say, well, it's a gray area. But anyhow, go on, Jim.
So it's just disappointing. I think the island we really got to get a hold on this budget. We need to make a move on it. If the governor's ready to veto it, veto it. Don't drag us on to the 11th hour and then to kind of come back in, which I'm sure the rubber stampers will want to increase this budget amount to something even worse than what it is right now, for money that we don't have or project to have. The governor gave a really rosy picture after receiving the OPA's audit report, but that's not a true picture. The funds are not there, and the future does not look great at this point until we get the community working again and businesses open, of course, with the safety of the people in mind. But if we're not going to start getting rid of deputy directors and these other silly things, Pacific Islands Development Bank, executive security, G3 initiatives, and there's more that I could have done also, but I was just getting nowhere because they just want to rubber stamp it and move this budget forward in order for the governor to veto it so we can come back and increase it. That's my
Jim, didn't the governor also tell us, in fact, kind of brag that she has reduced the deficit?
She certainly did.
She reduced the deficit by $32 million, and it only took a gross receipts tax increase of $43 million to do that.
Exactly, which was that gross receipt tax increase of 5% was only initially supposed to be for 6 months. Then it went to 1 year until the famous words "forever." So it's wrong. Overall, it's wrong, and that's what my no vote was for this purpose. I don't see any use of these little playing games of saying what's wrong with this budget, and she should hurry up and veto it, and then we can get back to work, and we'll hear what my colleagues will want to do next. It probably increase it, but it better not be anything in the form of taxes as well, because that's just definitely wrong.
Well, Jim, all eyes are on you. At least my two eyes are on you, hoping that you will be the backbench sharpshooter that's necessary to bring some sanity to the proceedings over there. I hope you continue.
Yeah, likewise. And if I had the chance for the next legislature, I'll keep up the fight. But one thing I want to say is I'm glad that we have an action pack now with the community that is interested in seeing who they can support as an organization, nonpartisan, that would do these right things for the people of Guam, especially part-time legislature. Since this pandemic, you can see we could have been part-time, might as well have been part-time. And I think this is a good example of we can be part-time. And I'd like to see that happen at the 36th legislature too. But thanks, Bob.
Okay, Jim. Good talking to you as usual.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Long. Okay, so let's see. I got our Fred on the line, and I've got someone named Jimmy the Third, as though he were royalty, right? So Jimmy the Third, it's only fair that I take our Fred first, and then I'll come back to you. Good afternoon, our Fred.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, you've had enough Jimmys on the line since the 4 o'clock Logic and
a double
Common
Jimmy.
Sense Hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, the Logic and Common Sense Hour has upon us. Speaking about budget, and you're speaking to Senator Moylan, I mean, Bob, a close to $1 billion budget, and we're still short. Amazing. We're a small island, 30 by 9 miles, and $1 billion budget.
And we don't have enough money.
Let's have a moment of silence just for that. We want to play the piano and the violin?
The sad music for our friend, yeah. A small island in the western.
Short.
A small island in the western Pacific. 210 square miles.
And we're short of money.
With a $950 million budget, does not have enough money to keep its people healthy and safe.
Wow.
What is to
Rescue
become?
us.
What is to become of this island?
Uncle Sam, rescue us. I mean, those famous sayings, live within your means and so forth. I can't believe that the government can't figure out where to simply cut a little bit to work within their budget and their means. And amazing. You see the private sector and people calling and saying, how is the government going to survive if they don't open up businesses? They need the GRT to survive and so forth. Why is the private sector even worried about the paying or the government receiving the GRT when they're not even worried about it? Because if they were worried about it, they'd open up the private sector.
Seems right to me.
But they're the least worried. They're least worried. I don't see why the private sector keeps arguing that point when the government don't care. They have the Uncle Sam's money coming in, and that's probably good enough for the next 2 years. And keeping the pandemic going is going to keep that coming in. So I don't think the government is really cares about the GRT. Reducing it or keeping it the same, big deal, I think, with the way the response is. And, reducing it from 5 to 4, or even, for the pandemic, we're in either we're in the middle of it or almost over. But 7 months we're going on, and nothing's been done. And, Ray this morning said, if you reduce from 5 to 4, the price of goods drops. And it's not like people will spend less. But with that savings, they'll probably buy something else in the store with the savings. So it's not like people will buy less. They'll actually buy more. There's a famous saying in business, and it's called, you want to make a quick dime or slow quarter? With keeping the prices high, people will spend less on Guam and opt to shop online for cheaper prices. Even with the shipping, the prices are still cheaper. So the money goes off island. Now, if we lower the prices, people have more buying power, and you make that dime faster. A quicker dime is going to add up quicker than that slow quarter you're making. The government will get their revenue. It's a simple, what do you call that? It's that class we take, economics, it's in school. It's simple economics. You put more money, you lower the taxes. Taxes are just squeezing, and the GRT is an outdated tax format. There's only one state that's using it in the U.S. mainland. I think it's Delaware or something. Who even talks about Delaware? It's outdated. The sales tax is what's being used. This progressive GRT is actually cripples economies. So they need to move away from the talk of GRT and into sales tax, and right away. So that and the budget, I think the budget, we're pretty good on that $950 million. Cut costs and save. It's time to tighten up the belt and open up the business economy. At what cost are we going to continually keep it on lockdown? Dr. Shea has said the 3 W's are there. Practice it. Those who want to take extra precautions, stay home and let the economy open up. Simple. It's that simple. And, you know, I read Janice Manglotnia's article on I think it just came out. It's on Facebook on PDN, that they're not opening up because the infrastructure won't allow, which is GMH, won't allow them to lift the PCOR 1 restrictions. Well, is that the business community's fault? That the GMH infrastructure... It's
everybody's fault. Jana Manglotnia told it, it's all our fault. We're all to blame. Yeah, we made the mess. Yep.
Yep, and I see a lot of GovCom employees actually getting the virus. So it's not their fault, but it's your and mine's fault.
That's for sure.
I know you didn't get it, and I didn't get it either, so it's not our fault. But all the ones talking actually got it. So the infrastructure won't allow it. But is that our fault that the infrastructure wasn't expanded to allow for a virus to...
I'm going to go way out on the limb here and run the risk of being canceled. It's Jana Manglotnia's fault, our Fred.
Right. It is her fault.
Got to take a break, our Fred. Got to take a break, our Fred. Thanks for calling. Yeah.
Okay.
And after the break, I'm going to go to Jimmy the Third and another Joe's second ride on the Ferris wheel.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. Probably don't know this, but Wrigley Field was built by a gentleman named P.K. Wrigley. And you may have seen his name around. He's a big man in gum. Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum is what built Wrigley Field and made P.K. Wrigley a multi-millionaire for his time. He paid a lot of attention to that ballpark. If you've ever seen pictures of it, it's not your standard ballpark with billboards around the outfield wall. Instead of billboards, there are vines, ivy. The wall is covered with ivy vines.
Is that the Green Monster?
The Green Monster is Fenway Park.
Fenway, okay.
Yeah, and that's just a big green piece of wood, yeah.
Okay.
But Wrigley Field was billed, maybe still is, billed as the world's most beautiful ballpark, which was good, because if you went to see a good baseball team, you'd leave disappointed. If you went to see a pretty ballpark, you'd come away happy. So after the seventh inning stretch, we've got another Joe and Jimmy the Third on the line. Let's see, another Joe's already had one, has had one or two? They both had two, huh? So another Joe's had one ride on the Ferris wheel. So I'm going to go to another Joe, and then I'll pick you up, Jimmy the Third. Hello again, another Joe.
Yeah, good, Bob. So, very interesting that the way that the government rationalizes the way they do stuff. For example, they're talking about helping the homeless, but due to this increase to P Core 1, the social workers are restricted from going out and helping the homeless to find a place to stay. so I mean, the point being that their position was created to assist the homeless, but they shut themselves down. So I'm not sure I understand that. And all these, I guess it's the same as the governor hiring people and then paying them to stay home, I guess.
Yeah, like Michelle Parrish, she got all the paperwork put in place so they could cut her a check while she stayed home because her agency was closed.
But, Uncle Bob, it's really terrible. God forbid that we start finding people out in the woods in the boony jungle area, and no one is really going out and checking on them, where people are risk getting in trouble for going to the beaches. They cannot gather in the beaches, but it's okay for them to gather in the jungle areas. Does that make any sense, Bob? If we're contact tracing?
Well, I'd have to check with the chief about that because, the chief set up the chief's task force to patrol the beaches to make sure that no one is down there using those beaches. I don't know if he has enough manpower to patrol the boonies to make sure that people aren't violating the rules in the boonies too. Another Joe.
Well, for that matter, we start fighting them when they lift. God forbid that we start fighting them once they lift the restrictions and people actually are going out more. But I mean, if you got several hundred individuals living homeless, it's not beyond imagination that they're going to find someone out there eventually, and lo and behold, guess what? It's another case of Wuhan virus. So, I mean, it just makes sense. If you're going to start something to assist with the homeless, you're going to start an organization, an agency, an office, and there they are. You just got to send someone out to find them. It doesn't make sense not to place them and that way, it's part of contact tracing. So anyway, I know I've been repeating myself. It's just, it's somewhat frustrating. And then they're talking about they need to establish another homeless shelter. Well, yeah, if you got several hundred individuals living homeless in the streets, I would think you're going to need several homeless shelters. Do you think, unless you have other programs to place them in apartments? What's your thought about that, Uncle Bob? Do you think that we can delay this much longer? Is it going to be, we're pushing our luck?
Well,
we're not doing the homeless sooner.
The homeless, you've heard me talk before about the homeless, and to say we're dealing with the homeless is a mistake, because it's not a matter of people not having a home, it's a matter of people having other problems. Some of the people that don't have homes because they're schizophrenic and can't take care of themselves. But the Supreme Court decided in 1975 that unless a person is a danger to himself or a danger to somebody else, he cannot be institutionalized. Some of the people that don't have homes because they would rather spend their time and money buying and using drugs. Some of the people don't have homes because their family threw them out. And I suppose there are some other reasons, but I think it's really, I had one guy call. I think it's really hard to find someone who is living on the street because he lost his job and wasn't able to pay his rent, et cetera, and didn't have any choice but to go out and live in the street. I don't think that happens very often. So to say, well, we've got to help the homeless, if my thesis is correct and you rounded up the categories of people that I just described and put them somewhere where they had a roof over their head, you'd still have, what you'd have would be a shelter full of dysfunctional people who will find some other way to be dysfunctional. So I think this whole dwelling on the homeless is a bad mistake.
Would you say, Uncle Bob, though, is it fair to say that what we see as people living homeless on the streets, on Guam, it seems like a more recent occurrence. Well, actually, recent, I mean, really starting around the 90s.
I'd say that's true, yeah.
So before then, our community had a different attitude in how to deal with it.
Tisinyo na sa familia niya. Yeah.
I'm starting to get a tongue twisted here. Enough Malik, right? That's the incorrect term.
It's a term that's so overused as to almost have lost its meaning. It's like the other day when we were talking about Dr. Akimoto and the F word. You know, you use a word in every single situation and you devalue it because you overuse it and it loses its value. And that's what's happened to Anaphamalik.
Real quick, the last question, Uncle Bob, is what's your thought about states such as Hawaii and other states who have a fund to put individuals who are basically living possibly homeless on the streets on an airplane to other U.S. states? Is that an option for Guam?
So what is the question again?
I believe that Hawaii, and I don't know how many other states have a fund that's funded through their legislature to put homeless individuals, possibly that don't originate from Hawaii, on an airplane going somewhere else.
Well, we used to have the suspicion that what Hawaii did was gather up people and put them on a plane and mail them to Guam, and then it would become our problem.
Then it turned out to be true.
And as Jose says, it turned out to be true.
So do you think we should have something similar to that with our government, with our legislature?
And send ours back to Honolulu?
Don't give them any ideas.
You know, get a discount from the airlines.
I have this old-fashioned idea that there's such a thing as individual responsibility, and everyone is responsible for his own. Excuse me, I made a bad. Jose, the real Joe was real good at catching me on this.
Their
own.
Yeah, everyone is responsible for their own housing and everything else. And the more the government gets into the sets up things where it provides housing and these other things, the less personal irresponsibility you'll find. And one of my rules of economics is if you want less of something, tax it. If you want more of something, subsidize it. So, you know, if you want to have more, quote, homeless people, just let the word get out. If all you got to do is go down and sleep at the Paseo for a few nights, and you'll wind up in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Or on an airplane.
Or on an airplane to Honolulu, yeah.
Or the Copacabana.
Okay, Bob. Uncle Bob, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh, I saw it. Good talking to you, Another Joe. So that's Another Joe. Did I lose? Oh, I hung up on Jimmy by mistake. Jimmy, call back. I'm sorry. I hung up on you instead of Another Joe. I pushed the wrong button. I didn't mean to Janella you, Jimmy.
It's the verb now.
Yeah. Well, I'm waiting for Jimmy to call back.
But you're on your way to getting a job at DPHSS.
I think he's on it. He's back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Jimmy. Sorry. What can you tell me?
I can tell you, I have 2020 voter guides from the Guam Daily Post.
Uh-huh.
Special supplements.
Okay.
And it was just an idea that maybe you could excuse me if I use biblical words. The shoulder accountants cares against them. This is the 2020 voter guide. And maybe you could... They got this one, they got this one, they got a bunch of politicians.
Yeah, Jimmy, I have part of that on the card. The part that I have on the card is Underwood versus Castro versus San Nicolas. Well, I'll get to that sooner or later, yeah, but I have that on the card.
Underhanded Underwood. Underhanded Underwood.
Papadzu.
I don't speak that language.
Okay.
I'm not a politician. But anyway, perhaps later, before the real election, you could, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but perhaps you could just peruse the politicians.
Now, Jimmy, when the time is right, I'm going to go down the list and I'm going to share my thoughts and impressions on each of the candidates with all the tailgaters. So it's a little too soon right now. I'll give them a chance to be as persuasive as they can be, but I'll do it before the election.
Bless your soul.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good talking to you again.
God.
So, Jimmy was three strikes on Jimmy, right?
Did he swing?
Yeah, he swung. Okay, so I got a post here from going back to Shelton and Shelton to Shelton. Where the heck is it? Yeah. This is from Dennis Mace. It could be said that the Guam Green Growth, or G3, is a political agency and shouldn't receive any of the people's monies. Guam Green Growth. It sounds like an environmental wacko undertaking. And if it is, I agree with Dennis.
The New Green Deal?
Yeah. The Green New Deal, yeah. The greening of America. Okay, so, wow. Almost time for the home stretch, and I'm just now getting to the card.
I don't even think we've given a blue star out.
That's right. You're right. Thanks for reminding me. Certainly the Blue Star
Well deserved.
is well deserved today. And if, there's such things as matter and antimatter, yeah, well, the Daily News gets an anti-Blue Star today for that piece of tripe that they ran. There it is, the Post. Congratulations, Guam Daily Post. So this is what I got on the card that I'll get to work on right on down the home stretch. I start out with California's wiener versus children. California's wiener is California senator named Tim Weiner, California's wiener. And then I've got the Women's Chamber versus Lou. I've got DOL versus BOSAP. I've got apathy versus the Election Commission. Nancy Pelosi versus invasion of privacy. The national government versus private property. Walter Williams versus diversity. And Hawaii versus gods and arrows. So let's get on the home stretch, and I'll start out with California's wiener versus children.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Don't know what happened there, Bob.
Did you push the wrong button?
Let's do this. Boom, boom, boom.
Well, just let me launch into the into the home stretch here from Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Are you ready, Jose?
I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened here.
Well, we'll just skip the bumper music then, and I'll just
Sure.
do it. Yeah. So here we are. We got about 12 more minutes here until the end of another perfect day on Tall Tales. First item on the card is California's wiener versus children. The California General Assembly, comprised of a Democrat supermajority, has advanced legislation that could ease the criminal punishment for LGBT adults who have sex with underage teenagers. Who could possibly object to such forward-looking legislation? The bill was introduced by State Senator Scott Wiener. I didn't make this up. That's the guy's real name, Senator Scott Wiener, an openly gay man, and seeks to prevent gay adults who sodomize or perform oral sex with underage teenagers from being automatically assigned to California's sex offender registry, which apparently is the law right now. Horror of horrors. Now, let me just take this phone call here. I hate to have someone call in at the end of the show and then not be able to get on. So I'm going to interrupt what I'm doing, and I'm going to go straight to the forest. Yeah. So I got a caller online here, Bill Forrest. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, RK, and I'll be quick because I want to hear the rest of the story.
Okay.
But, I just want to relate something. about 20 years, Lewinsky took on a new meaning. And so today, my hair was too long, and I had to sneak into a salon to get a Pelosi.
Okay, I got you, Phil, and I got that on the card. But the rest of the story is there was a horrible invasion of privacy there, Phil.
Well, it's set up, but today I wasn't set up. I volunteered.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing
So
that.
not only can you commit to be hypocritical, but you can lie about it and think you're going to get away. I don't think so. Anyway, I'm going to listen to the rest of the show.
Thanks for calling, Phil. Phil Flores, one of our sponsors. Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, California versus Wiener. The legislation calls for a judge to use discretion on assigning an individual to the sex offender registry if their victim was between the ages of 14 to 17 and the age difference between the offender and the victim is less than 10 years. More Romeo and Juliet legislation, right? Boy, I'll bet you Aperon wishes they'd had. Well, strike that. I'll come back to that later on. The bill passed the California State Senate by a 23-10 vote and passed the Assembly by a 41-18 vote. Wiener claims the bill eliminates discrimination against LGBTQ youth in our criminal justice system. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle. Under current law, a judge can decide whether to place a man who has vaginal intercourse with an underage teenage girl on the sex offender registry based on the facts of the case. Even that seems a little bit too liberal for me. But if anal or oral sex or vaginal penetration with anything other than a penis is involved, the adult must register as a sex offender. A relic of a penal code that criminalized those acts until 1975, even between consenting adults. The California Supreme Court upheld the legal difference in 2015, arguing that because vaginal intercourse can lead to pregnancy. Wow, that's a little-known fact, isn't it?
It's been
is that biologically sound?
Yeah, it's being discovered.
Yeah. Forcing a father to register as a sex offender would subject him to social stigmatization that could make it difficult to find a job and support his child.
You don't say.
So they didn't put those kinds of rapists, they didn't put on the sex offender registry because it would make it difficult. It would stigmatize him. This is California.
Don't you put a label on me.
Yeah, this is California. You know, this is not from the real world. This is from California. State Representative Lorena Gonzalez, a Democrat, said, "I cannot in my mind as a mother understand how sex between a 24-year-old and a 14-year-old could ever be consensual. How could it ever not be a registrable offense? We should never give up this idea that children should be in no way subject to a predator." Now, I got to jump in here for a second. First of all, I've got a writ of I told you so. I petitioned for a writ of I told you so about 10 years ago, and everything that I told you was going to happen is happening. And the next frontier now is pederasty, adults sexually molesting children. It's not pedophilia, it's ephebophilia or hebophilia. Because you're talking 14 years old, you're talking about post-pubescent children. But it's a standard old incremental approach to things, one little thing at a time. First change the sexual registry, and then a tweak here and a tweak there. And before you know it, the NAMBLA, the National Man-Boy Love Association, is going to be as formidable as the Human Rights Association. All right, let me see who I got online. I got R. Keith and Jimmy Quattro. I think R. Keith was on once before, right? No, it wasn't. It wasn't R. Keith. Okay, I'm going to go R. Keith, and then Jimmy Quattro. I ought to put you fourth in line, but since you called second, I'm going to make you second instead of fourth. And I got another caller coming, so call on the line. So we got to keep it brief, Keith. What can you tell me?
No, that's just Jimmy calling the second time there. It's weird.
Hi, Bob. I can't help myself. This really does. This really does sort of redefine the term penal code, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Keith. Good call. Was it? Okay, and then we've got Jimmy Quattro. You're not my fourth caller, Jimmy. You're next, so go for it. Hello, Jimmy.
We lost Jimmy.
We lost you. Oh, that's our Jimmy.
That's our Jimmy.
Fourth
ride.
Emina Quattro. Okay, the fourth, right? So, okay, sorry about that, Jimmy. So let me just see what I got here on Facebook comments. Maybe that's Jimmy calling back. Yeah. Hello, Jimmy.
I'll be brief.
Hey, we got two Jimmys on the line here again.
I'll be brief.
Go for it, Jimmy.
Child sex in the Philippines. Child sex in the Philippines. You want child sex? Go to the Philippines.
I don't want child sex. I'm intolerant of such a thing,
well,
Jimmy.
I hope you don't want child sex. But if some people want child sex, they go to the Philippines.
Well, I hope you're not the advanced man, Jimmy.
Well, no.
Okay, Jimmy. So, 4 calls today, huh?
No more tickets for him.
Yeah.
Not today.
Not today. So, let's see if there's anything more in this article about California's wiener. Yesterday, we had California versus them because California's wiener had introduced a bill to allow men to pick what sex they would present themselves as if they were sent to prison. So I have this mental image of a group of convicts lined up out in front of the bus to San Quentin or Folsom Prison, and the prison guard is out there saying, "Okay, all you guys that want to be women, take one step forward."
Sounds like a couple steps backwards.
It does. Yeah.
Is this the same wiener?
The same wiener, yeah.
Well, it sounds like these proposals are connected. Might not need one if the other one passes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's California. In most states, this guy couldn't get elected assistant dog catcher of Malolo if he ran for office here. In California, he's a star because, well, you know, he's so woke. A classic definition or example of a state senator who is really, really woke. Okay, the next item on the card,
He's a wiener, but he's no hot dog.
He's no hot dog, that's for sure. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to talk a little bit about the women's chamber versus Lou. And if Senator Wiener introduces more bills in California, we'll have more from California's wiener.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. HD3.
Joe Biden, Wisconsin bound. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Democrat presidential candidate announcing he is traveling to Kenosha today.